There's something about the music of the 1960s that still feels electric. You hear a song, and suddenly you're back. Windows down, radio up, not a care in the world. But some of those songs, if they came out today, they wouldn't last a week. Here are 10 songs from the 1960s that would be banned today. Number 10. Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, 1963. It was 1963, and a garage band from Portland, Oregon recorded a cover of a Richard Berry tune in a single take. The result was one of the most controversial recordings in American music history, not because the song was dirty, but because nobody could understand a word of it. Jack Ely, the lead singer, wore dental braces at the time of recording, which made his slurred delivery almost completely indecipherable. The microphone was positioned above his head, and he had to shout up at it, which didn't help. The song was, in fact, about a sailor longing to return to his girl in Jamaica. Pretty innocent stuff. But teenagers across the country started passing around handwritten translations of the lyrics that were anything but innocent. 2 kids in Indiana wrote to the governor claiming the song was obscene, and the complaint eventually reached the Federal Communications Commission. What happened next is almost too absurd to believe. The FBI launched a full investigation, producing a 119-page report. According to the FBI's own official records, the Bureau's investigation ran from February to May 1964, just 3 months. Agents played the recording at multiple speeds trying to decode the lyrics. The official conclusion was that the lyrics were unintelligible at any speed, and the investigation was closed with no finding of obscenity. Related FCC proceedings continued into late 1965, but the FBI's direct involvement was brief. There is, however, one actual obscenity in the recording. The drummer, Lynn Easton, accidentally dropped one of his sticks during the take. If you listen at around the 56-second mark, you can hear him mutter something that definitely wasn't in the original song. Nobody noticed for decades.
Okay, let's give it to him right now.
Today, a song surrounded by an FBI obscenity investigation would almost certainly be swept off the airwaves before the story even developed. The irony is that the song itself is perfectly clean. Number 9. 8 Miles High by the Byrds, 1966. The Byrds released 8 Miles High in March 1966, and within months it had been banned from radio by the influential trade publication Gavin Report, which distributed a list of banned songs to radio stations across the country. The official charge was that the song's title and lyrics were references to drug use. The band maintained, consistently and across decades of interviews, that the song was about an airplane flight, specifically their first tour of England in late 1965. The 8 miles high of the title referred to the cruising altitude of a commercial jet. The disorientation in the lyrics came from arriving in a foreign country and being overwhelmed by the chaos that came with being a successful American band abroad.
Some laughing, some just shameless for.
The song was genuinely unusual. Musically, guitarist Roger McGuinn had been listening extensively to John Coltrane's saxophone work and brought a Coltrane-influenced approach to his 12-string electric guitar playing on the track. The result sounded like nothing else on American radio in 1966, angular, modal, and dense in a way that set it apart from everything around it. None of that mattered to the stations that pulled it. The word high in the title was enough, at a moment when rock music and drug use had become inseparable in the public imagination. The BBC also refused to play it.
Some living, some standing alone.
The ban hurt the song commercially. It stalled at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 despite the band's considerable reputation. and many believe it would have performed significantly better without the radio blackout. Today, algorithmic content review wouldn't need a person to read the lyrics. The word high in the title, combined with the song's psychedelic associations, would likely trigger automated flags before any human ever listened to it. Number 8. Light My Fire by The Doors, 1967. Few moments in American television history were quite as defiant as what Jim Morrison did on The Ed Sullivan Show on September 17, 1967. He was asked to change a single word. He agreed. And then, in front of millions of viewers, he sang it anyway. The song had already caused problems before that night. Light My Fire, The Doors' debut single, had climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 that summer. One of its lines, referring to how high a person could get, was flagged by Sullivan's producers as a drug reference. The band was told the line had to go. They agreed to the change, and the Sullivan team believed the matter was settled. But when the cameras rolled and Morrison stepped up to the microphone, he sang the original line. He later claimed he was so caught up in performing that he simply forgot. Keyboardist Ray Manzarek had a different recollection, suggesting it was deliberate. Either way, the Sullivan organization was furious and banned The Doors from ever returning to the program. A significant blow, since Sullivan appearances were considered enormously valuable at the time. It wasn't the only controversy surrounding the song. The original album version runs over 7 minutes, and radio stations were initially reluctant to play it at that length. A shortened single version was created specifically for radio. Even that shorter version faced scrutiny. Today, the word that caused all the trouble wouldn't raise an eyebrow. But a live television defiance of network censors, combined with the song's ongoing drug associations, would ignite a social media firestorm no publicist could contain. Number 7. Eve of Destruction by Barry Maguire, 1965.
Tell me over and over and over.
There are protest songs, and then there is Eve of Destruction. Released in August 1965, written by 19-year-old P.F. Sloan, and recorded by folk rock singer Barry Maguire in a single rough take, it was the most explicitly political song to crack the top of the American charts in years. The song swept across everything that was wrong with the world in 1965. The escalating war in Vietnam, civil rights marchers being beaten in Selma, tensions in the Middle East, the absurdity of nuclear weapons alongside profound human suffering. It asked listeners what exactly they thought they were celebrating when young men were dying overseas and fellow citizens were being beaten in the streets.
We're on the eve of destruction.
The response from broadcasters was swift. The ABC radio network banned the song outright, as did dozens of individual stations. The Christian anti-communist crusade actively campaigned against it, and critics called it unpatriotic. A countersong was quickly recorded by the New Christy Minstrels, a response to what was being described as an aid to the enemy in Vietnam. None of that stopped it from climbing to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September 1965.
I don't believe we're on the eve of...
Maguire recorded the song in such a rush that he hadn't finished memorizing the lyrics. He was reading from the sheet as he sang, which gave the performance a ragged, desperate quality that ended up working in the song's favor. Sloan had written it in a single night, pulling from newspaper headlines. Today, the song would face a different kind of challenge. A direct, unambiguous critique of government policy, military action, and systemic injustice, delivered without the softening of metaphor, would almost certainly be labeled divisive content on platforms that have become increasingly cautious about hosting material that could be interpreted as politically inflammatory, regardless of which direction it comes from.
Tell me over and over and over.
Number 6. Under My Thumb by the Rolling Stones, 1966.
To me, the change has come, she's under math.
When Aftermath was released in April 1966, it marked a turning point for the Rolling Stones, the first album made up entirely of original Jagger Richards compositions. Buried in the middle of that record was a song that would follow the band for the rest of their career, not for its music, which features a remarkable marimba part played by Brian Jones, but for what it says. Under My Thumb is a first-person account of a man who celebrates having finally dominated the woman in his life. She is compared throughout to a pet, a Siamese cat, a squirming dog. She speaks only when spoken to. He, meanwhile, still does as he pleases. The song was said to be inspired by Mick Jagger's relationship with his girlfriend Chrissy Shrimpton, who later described him as very controlling, very paternalistic. Jagger generally deflected when pressed about it. In a 1995 conversation with Rolling Stone magazine, he called it a bit of a jokey number and described the subject as a caricature. Keith Richards, less diplomatically, once linked its origins to the band's environment on the road. Feminist scholars and critics took immediate issue with the song, and that conversation never entirely stopped. American humanities professor Camille Paglia later cited her defense of it as one of the flashpoints in her break with the radical feminist movement. The song took on a far darker historical association on December 6, 1969, at the Altamont Free Concert in Northern California. The band was performing Under My Thumb when a violent altercation broke out between audience members and the Hells Angels hired as security. An 18-year-old concertgoer named Meredith Hunter was stabbed and killed, a moment captured in the documentary film Gimme Shelter. Today, the song rarely appears in the Stones' live set lists. By current content review standards, the framing of a woman as a domestic animal under her partner's control would almost certainly result in the track being flagged, demonetized, or quietly removed from recommendation algorithms.
To me, the change has come, she's under math.
Number 5. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by The Beatles, 1967. When Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was released in June 1967, almost every track on it was scrutinized for hidden meaning, but no song attracted more suspicion than Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The reason was simple. Take the first letter of the three nouns in the title, LSD. The BBC and a large portion of the listening public immediately concluded the song was a coded tribute to the psychedelic drug. The BBC banned it without hesitation. John Lennon maintained for the rest of his life that the song was not about LSD. He said the title came from a drawing his son Julian had made at school of a classmate named Lucy O'Donnell, with stars painted in the sky above her. Julian called it Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and Lennon built a song around it. That account was later corroborated by Lucy O'Donnell herself, who confirmed that she and Julian were close friends at Heath House School in Weybridge. Paul McCartney's account was more complicated. While affirming the story of Julian's drawing, McCartney acknowledged in his 1997 biography that drugs had influenced the Sgt. Pepper's sessions broadly. The song's imagery, kaleidoscope eyes, tangerine trees, marmalade skies, reads differently depending on what one assumes the authors were experiencing when they wrote it. Whether or not the title's initials were intentional, the BBC's ban held firm. The summer of 1967 was the summer of love, and authorities on both sides of the Atlantic were increasingly alarmed by the connection between popular music and the growing drug culture. For the BBC, banning the song was a statement. Today, the drug debate around the song is almost beside the point. The title's initials alone would generate enough social media attention to trigger a content moderation event, regardless of what Lennon actually intended. Number 4. Run for Your Life by The Beatles, 1965.
Rather see a dead little girl girl than to be with.
There are songs that age gracefully. And then there is Run for Your Life, recorded in October 1965. As the first track cut for Rubber Soul, it closed that album on a note that feels jarring next to the sophistication surrounding it. The song was written primarily by John Lennon, who later admitted he had borrowed the opening line from an early Elvis Presley recording, "Baby, Let's Play House," from 1955. That line frames the entire narrator as a man issuing a direct threat to his girlfriend. He would rather see her dead than with another man.
Better watch your head, little girl, or you won't know.
From there, the lyrics escalate. The narrator warns his girlfriend to hide, to run, and explicitly states that she should fear for her life. The song is sung cheerfully, with harmonies, over a bright folk rock arrangement, and that contrast between the sound and the words is part of what makes it so unsettling to modern ears. Even in 1965, the song didn't attract much critical praise. Lennon became increasingly uncomfortable with it over the years. In a 1973 interview, he named it his least favorite Beatles song, a throwaway he'd just knocked off without much care. Paul McCartney described it, with considerable understatement, as a bit of a macho song.
Rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with.
Number 3. Society's Child, by Janice Ian, 1967.
She says I can't see you anymore.
Janice Ian was 13 years old when she began writing Society's Child, completed it at 14, and recorded it at 15. It was first released as a single in September 1966, with its national breakthrough coming in 1967. The song tells the story of a white girl who walks away from a relationship with a black boy because the social pressure from her parents, her teachers, her community is simply too heavy to bear. The song didn't celebrate that choice. It presented it as a tragedy born of cowardice, a failure of courage in the face of prejudice. The narrator ends the song making the loneliest kind of promise, that maybe someday, when things are different, she'll find him again. It's a promise everyone understands she'll never keep.
Can't see you anymore.
Atlantic Records had originally financed the recording session, but then declined to release it, returning the master to Ian. The song was then shopped to 22 more record labels, all of which turned it down, before Verve finally agreed to put it out. Even then, radio stations across the country, including many in northern cities that considered themselves progressive, refused to play it. The subject matter of interracial dating was considered too incendiary for the airwaves. The turning point came when conductor Leonard Bernstein featured the song in a 1967 CBS television special about rock music. After that broadcast, Society's Child entered the national conversation in earnest and eventually reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Cutting deep down in our affairs.
Janice Ian received hate mail. There were bomb threats. A radio station in Atlanta was set on fire after playing the song. Today, the song would face a different but equally difficult landscape. Its critical portrayal of racial prejudice, told from the inside, without resolution or redemption, doesn't fit neatly into the political categories that determine whether content succeeds or fails on modern platforms. And the rawness of its language around race would attract controversy from multiple directions at once.
Baby, I'm only society's child.
Number 2. A Day in the Life, by the Beatles, 1967.
Having read the
By 1967, the Beatles had stopped touring and retreated into the studio to create what many still consider the greatest album ever made, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The closing track, A Day in the Life, is widely regarded as one of the most ambitious pieces of pop music ever recorded. It was also banned by the BBC the moment it was released. The song was a collaboration between John Lennon and Paul McCartney, each contributing distinct sections. Lennon's portions were inspired by 2 newspaper stories: a report about a man killed in a car crash and an item about potholes in Blackburn, Lancashire. McCartney's middle section was drawn from memories of catching a bus to school. Then, there were the cascading orchestral swells, a 40-piece orchestra playing from the lowest note on their instruments to the highest, in 24 bars. The effect was unlike anything heard on a pop record before. The BBC banned it immediately, citing the line, "I'd love to turn you on," as a drug reference. They also took issue with the line, "Found my way upstairs and had a smoke," which they believed referred to marijuana. The Beatles denied any drug connection, though McCartney later acknowledged in his 1997 biography, Paul McCartney, many years from now, that drug use had influenced the Sgt. Pepper's sessions. Banned or not, the song became one of the most celebrated recordings in history. Rolling Stone ranked it among the greatest songs ever made, and it remains one of the most streamed Beatles songs on Spotify today.
Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head.
Number 1. Street Fighting Man by the Rolling Stones, 1968. By the summer of 1968, the world felt as though it was coming apart at the seams. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated in April. Robert Kennedy was shot in June. Paris had been filled with student protesters in May. And in August, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago turned into something close to a riot, with police clashing violently with demonstrators outside the convention hall. Into that moment came Street Fighting Man, a Rolling Stones single released in August 1968. The song didn't call for revolution exactly, but it sat with the anger of the moment, and then admitted, honestly, that the options for action were limited. It was, in some ways, a song about frustration, more than revolt. Chicago's mayor Richard J. Daley didn't see it that way. With the convention chaos still fresh, city officials moved to ban the single from Chicago radio stations. The concern was straightforward. The city had just lived through days of street confrontations, and a song with street fighting in the title, by the Rolling Stones no less, seemed like an invitation to more of the same. The ban was specific to Chicago and its surrounding area, but it drew national attention because of the timing. The Stones were already under scrutiny. The band had been the subject of a high-profile drug raid at Keith Richards' English country estate the previous year, and their anti-establishment image was firmly established. The song had been inspired partly by the protests outside the U.S. Embassy in London in March 1968, which Mick Jagger had witnessed in person. The emotional content was real, but the timing of its American release, landing in the middle of the most politically volatile week of the year, made it feel more incendiary than it was. Today, a chart-topping single from one of the world's most famous bands, released during a week of national civil unrest with a title evoking street-level political violence, would be the center of a content crisis within hours. Streaming platforms would be under immediate pressure, and calls for removal would come from multiple directions before the week was out. These songs came from one of the most creative and turbulent decades in recorded music. The 1960s were a time when artists pushed against every boundary they could find: social, political, musical, and the world pushed back hard. Some got banned, investigated, and dragged through headlines. Others sailed past the censors and became classics before anyone thought too hard about the words. What's remarkable is that so many of them are still with us. You can hear them on the radio, stream them anytime, find them on greatest hits collections in any record store that still exists. The controversies faded, the music stayed. But if those same songs arrived today, in a world of automated content review, viral outrage cycles, and platform policies written by committee, the story would be very different. Some of them wouldn't make it past the first algorithm. It's worth sitting with that. Not everything the 1960s produced deserves a pass. A few of those songs were genuinely troubling, and even their creators came to recognize it. But the era produced music that was alive, that took risks, that said something. Whether we'd have the patience for that today is a real question. If you enjoyed this trip back through the music and the headlines, go ahead and hit like, and subscribe if you haven't already. There's plenty more where this came from.